You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today, once again, we're going to jump back into retail media, top of a lot of people's minds right now, what's going on in the space. And I got connected with Marc Walkin here from Turbyne. A few months back, we did a full day event in the city, and then just got the opportunity to reconnect. And out of it came a really interesting take on retail media and where it's at. So, but before we get to that, Marc, I'll kick it over to you if you want to do, background yourself, Turbyne, what you're doing. That'd be awesome. That'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. So I've come to retail media in a maybe non-traditional way. I'm not an ad tech person. So I spent my post-business school career on CPG side, all challenger brands, right? Be a person who'd be brought in after like an acquisition or a hard reset. So I would help build out corporate strategy, brand strategy, kind of the marketing infrastructure and strategic infrastructure that's needed. So I would be a person who might run shopper marketing, digital marketing, help sales, sell in, all of these things. And it kind of gave me a real crash course, 360-degree view of all things CPG. And then I did something similar on the retail side, more in the most pronounced way at Stop and Shop, where this was a few years back, right when they decentralized from Pennsylvania. So there was no marketing team, no local merchandising team, and they had just hired a new CMO. I was brought in early to help kind of reshape that experience, and it was a very cross-functional role. So I understood the intimate details of how retail works and all of the craziness that goes along with that. And I netted out as part of Advantage Solutions, and they tasked Turbyne's co-founder and myself with how do we play in retail media? What do we do? So we, within our collective research and experience, and then talking to a lot of retailers and brands, we figured out that there's really an infrastructure problem, and there needs to be some kind of technology to simplify the process for everybody. And you'll hear me pontificate on all of that stuff very shortly. So Turbyne is a platform that's actually built for retailers it's a channel and platform neutral solution that allows retailers to sell and execute retail media across any channel seamlessly. So that's Turbyne. But I've kind of embedded myself in retail media in every aspect of it and have all too many opinions, as I do about most things.
Well, I do want to dig into like the one thing that like really piqued my interest is you're commenting like about this retail media Mirage.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, then I was like immediately, that's the name, that's the title of this episode for sure. But let's dig into that a little bit. What did you mean by retail media Mirage? Yeah.
And so we did a study, actually, BWG helped execute that, called Retail Media Mirage late last year. It's talking about a few different things. The study itself is really about the disconnect between what brands want out of retail media and their experience and what retailers think brands want and retailers experience, and how there's a pretty big gap in terms of the perception of what retail media is and should be. But there's also a interesting convergence on what should happen and how retail media should move forward. That's really what the study is about. You could argue that the Mirage is, there's various aspects in it. Retail media is obviously growing like crazy, but I have a strong conviction that until there's the process, the experience becomes easier, growth will be inhibited. Till there's more a more neutral set of channels that you can buy from, it's going to be inhibited. So lots of kind of basic foundational things that have to happen. That is not happening yet. That's going to force a recalibration of retail media.
Is that because, brands want more data. Retailers don't necessarily want to give up their proprietary data. and they're kind of like pushing that, hey, brands, just as long as you give us money, we'll show you that it's working. And brands, a lot of them that I'm talking to, they want the data so they can prove it to themselves that it's working rather than just people, the retail media networks by the retailers, they're pretty much grading their own homework. It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah. So the data stuff, what I'm referencing is even more fundamental and more basic than the data stuff. The data piece and then the grading their own homework that's kind of been an issue with digital forever, right? You have like 12 different partners taking credit for the same sale. It's a little, it's been a little wonky, I think, forever on that side. But yes, having retailers grade their own homework I think it lacks credibility, and I think it's lacking those value add insights that brands expect to see in their ads. But what I was referencing is before we even get to data. So in that study, first of all, we asked a basic question of, is retail media living up to the hype? We asked retailers and we asked brands. Retailers largely said yes, about 8.5 out of 10. Brands gave it a 6 out of 10. And more importantly, when you double click on that, we asked retailers, what do you think your biggest brands would grade that buying experience? And 65% of those retailers said their brands would give it an A. Would you like to guess what the brand said? What percent gave it an A?
0.
More than 0, but not much more. It's only 6% gave it an A. So already this massive disconnect. And the more and more you peel back the oven, it's all about what we found is the experience. That's a bigger problem than performance today. So half of brands said they don't plan on working with any new retail media network over the next 2 years. And it's primarily because they don't have the resources. Yes, there's the budget side, but even human resources, they literally don't have the team to manage the process because it's so disjointed and it's so painful. That's the reason why brands aren't, one of the reasons why brands actually are planning on not spending. Not that they're not spending more, but in terms of adding new retailers to their repertoire. So that's sort of what I meant when it's much more fundamental than that. The infrastructure is not there does not exist yet in retail media.
Wow. No, yes. I get it though. Because there's a lot of team consolidation going on right now.
Yeah.
Chat on this in other episodes where, the pandemic hits and we need 10x the number of e-com people and digital people that you don't get trained overnight. So it was this hopefully fake it till you make it. And, all these hires, and then we have, management teams coming in and realizing, hey, there's a chunk of these people who really don't know digital or what's going on. And you've got the leaders of the team saying, wait, I don't care. I just need a body in the seat right now. I don't care if they're 40% trained.
Yep.
40% trained is not like you're saying you're going to go out and hire the right person, pay them 50% more, and you have somebody that's 90% trained. You're saying I'm getting rid of them altogether. And now you're saying, oh, by the way, it does make sense.
Well,
they're complicated. They're cumbersome. You're constantly having to ask for data, justification, ROAS, KPIs, metrics. Is it working? Is it not? Did you just cannibalize? Was it worth it? And there's all these things that go into running it, right? From internally on the brand standpoint, manager doesn't have it, and they just lost 3 people.
Yeah. And so it's funny that you say that. So there's one kind of asymmetry is they're putting kind of folks who don't know e-com and digital into those spots. But there's also the other side that they're putting folks who only know e-com and digital and they don't know retail. That's the other big issue. And to me, if I feel like retail is not really a part of retail media, it's what retail media is today. It's almost as a brand problem where it's basically a repackaging of digital channels that's now allows you to quote unquote go direct through the retailer, which should have all these other benefits from data, return on overall relationship. But retailers don't have anything proprietary outside of their data. So they have their own sort of, all these intermediaries and all of these different partners that are kind of forcing a square peg into a round hole. And there's really nothing available that really fits the retailer working style. And that's sort of what I mean by infrastructure. And there's also nothing available that actually fits what brands want in terms of really trying to do a full funnel campaign or event that's based on, the real shopper journey. And one interesting stat in that same study was, so obviously, it's digital focused, right? Retail media is largely digital. Only 30% of a retailer's reach is actually on digital channels, and 10% and only 10% of their transactions are on digital channels. So what's happening is you have retailers playing Amazon's game, right? Amazon is 100%. So retailers start there. And now you have all of these brands fighting for very limited inventory where only 10% of transactions take place. So you're ultimately going to have kind of lower ROAS if you're kind of you're saturating these channels where transactions ultimately don't take place. And you're trying to beat Amazon at their own game when it's kind of apples and oranges a little bit. So, that's kind of what I mean, where we're not thinking like retailers, right? In-store shopper marketing, OG retail media, it's a $20 billion business today. We're not even including that in retail media, which to me is a bit bonkers. Now, the reason why you don't include it is it's hard and it's complicated. And it's really hard to connect digital or in-store activation with digital activation. So all of the workflows and partners and all of those things, it's difficult to execute. But I lost my train of thought. So where I'm going, so in-store, that studies found that, first of all, we gave them a list of all sorts of different tactics, right? Shopper marketing tactics, digital, retail media. And we just said, which ones belong in retail media? And both brands and retailers listed, I think, just about every single traditional in-store tactic should be in retail media. Yet it's not. And then we took it a step further, and brands actually said most of the in-store tactics are actually viewed as more effective than digital. And so my point in this is not that we shouldn't be focused on digital, because we should for all of the reasons that we are, but the fact that if you're leaving all of the in-store stuff off the table, you're kind of burying the lead of retail media. And it speaks to the fact that, we're not thinking about this from a holistic retail perspective. And that's why merchandising is not quite on board with retail media yet. And that's causing all sorts of issues. And there's all sorts of these internal silos that are preventing brands from realizing the true value of retail media, of what, the true potential, I should say, of retail media.
So who does it fall on then? Is it the retailers need to make the interaction easier? I mean, because they're saying, give us more money, and you have brands like, no, as long as it's like that, right? I'm not touching it. I just don't. And from the point that you're saying is, hey, it's not even really worth it at the end of the day. I mean, everybody's being told it's worth it. And for the longest time, FOMO was there. So everybody was doing it. But it's like this recalculation is happening right now.
Yeah. And that's the right word. Yeah. And I'm not saying retail media is going to decline or it's going to implode. I'm not saying anything like that. I think for it to reach its potential, ultimately retailers need to think like sellers, because the kind of one of the interesting paradoxes of retail media is it sort of disrupted this long-standing relationship dynamic between brands and retailers. Retailers are the brand's biggest customers, or the manufacturer's biggest customers. When you buy a box of Cheerios, you're not buying it from General Mills, you're buying it from Kroger. Kroger buys it from General Mills. So Kroger historically has held all of the leverage, right? I don't mean to pick on Kroger. I'm sure they're not doing this, but what's been happening is retailers are kind of continuing with that same, swagger, we'll call it, and say, you need to do this or else. And when in fact, now the brand, the manufacturer, are the customers. And they're saying, actually, we don't. We have Amazon that has a better experience. We have agencies, we have all of these other alternatives to you. So no, you need to step up. So the retailers have to begin to act like publishers and begin to act like ad tech and try to match the Amazon experience using the right inventory mix, which they're not doing right now.
Well, I mean, they're not ad tech people, right? I
Right.
mean, the advantage that an Amazon has is it's built in the age of the World Wide Web, right? They
Yep.
start coming out in late 90s. They're at the forefront of everything and they can build it and refine it over time. And also you lose money for the first 15 or whatever, however,
Yep.
20 years, however long it was. And you're fundamentally then, and they disrupt everything around the relationship and they can scope it differently as opposed to a traditional retailer who has been around 50, 60, I don't know, 80 years. And they're trying to do a complete culture shift as well. I mean, we've seen Walmart struggle with their media network. And, they launched it with, the bidding was all messed up and the inventory and what was showing up and how they were targeting. And it was basically brands were like, just copy Amazon, like just do exactly what they do.
Yeah.
But
And that's
fundamentally they can't.
Right. It eventually the bar has to be raised. And that's what I think most retailers have done. That's how they try to approach retail media. You hire Citrus or Criteo and you're done. And that's not what it is, right? That's a couple different channels and that's an intermediary. And there's a time and a place for obviously partners like that. But if you're going to be serious, you need to incorporate the full, maximize from a retailer standpoint, either full assets, right? Retail's most valuable assets are in store. And that's completely left off the table. And from a governance standpoint, typically the retail media teams will sit under marketing or under e-com, and it's really digitally focused. And that in merchandising, who, for retailers, almost probably 100% of the time, they're the ones with the most power internally. They're not necessarily on board with retail media. There's a perception that that's taking either trade funds or it's less. It's not going to drive purchase as much as shopper marketing or whatever. So you have this interesting either silo or actual resistance that's also complicating the process. On the merchandising front, one interesting stat in that study, I think it was the number 3 reason why brands aren't working with more retail media networks is literally because merchandising said don't. So you have merchandising literally telling them, please don't spend money on our retail media network. Now, that varies from retailer to retailer, right? That's going to be more prominent in some versus others. But that's I think speaks to the fact that retail media has not retail focused at all. And you need to look at it from a retailer first lens. There should be a world where merchandising owns retail media. It all should go together. It's the same from a brand standpoint. It's the same effort to try to get lift, right? Whether it's trade, whether it's display, whether it's shelf blades, whether it's on-site, off-site, whatever. It's all the same objective. And so these disconnects are man-made. They're completely subjective. And that's why I keep going back to the fundamentals. We need to have an infrastructure in place that leverages a retailer's greatest assets and can deal with the nuances, retailer-specific nuances.
Yeah, we did a dinner. Well, I think the brands want data, right? We did a dinner in Chicago a week before last, and it was around retail media and large CPG company there. I was talking to their head of basically retail media in a way, right? And the conversation got to the point where he said, hey, if I could just have one holistic view on where I'm spending in store and online, what's driving what, like, that's what I need. Right. And that's, it's funny because I did a podcast with Megan Caroon. She's over at Clear Data. Should probably have her back on and have her walk through. She does that holistic look. She's a data scientist. I mean, I wish I could code and pull that stuff out. I can't. But and give that report back. But it's almost like the retailer needs to do that. Because that's what this person was saying. Is like, if you just show me what's working and what's not, I'll pour more money into it. I'll give you more money. And if you can show me how one thing is tied to another, I'll pour into both. I don't care. But at this point in time, I don't know what to trust and what not to trust.
Yep.
All I know is you keep asking for more money, and
Yes.
my sales aren't necessarily directly tied to it.
Yeah. 80% of the brands we surveyed said they're having trouble, like extremely difficult to justify increasing spend, retail media investment. With that said, 3/4 said to your exact point, said they would invest more, an average of 23% increase investment if there was a single platform that unified everything together. From a workflow standpoint, never even mind data. Data, I think, is implied, but even just so they can plan and execute in one spot. Like that alone is, and then yes, of course, the data side. That's the data I think is a huge gap, but that's why I keep going back to the fundamentals. It's got to be easier before you even get to that. And so that's in both retailers and brands both said that's the number one thing that retail media needs. That's the number one driver of growth for retail media as an industry, is a unified platform.
So these large retailers, do they have to build their own retail media networks then? Because I can't rely on the traditional ones who haven't adapted or changed enough, right? I'm going to need to control that. I'm going to need to listen to, it's really weird, my customer now, which is the brand.
Yep.
Right. And listen to the feedback they're giving me if I want to grow that. Maybe they don't want to grow that as a line item. That's, I guess, is the other point, right? Do you even want to grow that?
They should. I mean, like after being in retail, it's mass retail is one of the worst business models that exist right now, right? Compared to SaaS, for example, right? You're talking about penny profits with a very complex distribution requirement, right? So it's all scale, right? Even a successful retailer, or at least on the grocery side, it's a 4% EBITDA. So, and now with retail media, you're looking at 70 to 90% margins on that, right? So no, they need it. Some realize they need it more than others, and all there's, but they need it. So I think I think there's just a lot of retailers want to build everything internally instead of leveraging tools, that might already be out there. But to me, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like I don't want this to be a Turbyne thing necessarily, but like what Turbyne does is it's basically a back-end platform that connects to any media partner. So it can be any in-store. Like Turbyne is not replacing a Citrus or a Vestcom. Turbyne plugs into them. So all of those inventory, they all plug into Turbyne. So it's a central place that then the retailer doesn't have to do any development. All the inventory is in one place that they can then go and sell at scale and manage all of the workflow in an automated way. It's a central place for everybody to work together instead of having literally, you could have 100 different workflows for like a single back to school campaign. So that's sort of where I'm going. Is it depends how you define building your own retail media network, right? No one's building pipes. The pipes exist. You need to find a way to put them all together. So that doesn't need to be this complicated thing. It's just none of the players who are heavy in the space today make any money from that. So, that's why it doesn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about adding another layer in a way.
Yes,
does the additional layer drive revenue? And there's not a precedence case out there today that's been sent that it does.
Right.
But I think it's pretty clear that it would.
Yeah. Yep. That's why this is all, if it's not Turbyne, it's going to be something else. This is inevitable. This sort of convergence of teams, of marketing tactics, and of kind of stakeholder goals are all going to converge. And that to me will be a great recalibration of retail media that's starting now.
Would it be almost a marketplace in a way?
Yeah, could be.
Where I'm a retailer picking the most current best in breed, right? I'm thinking almost like, man, chatting with somebody like the Mock Alliance on it or something like that. It's almost this best in breed marketplace where I can pull in and out, because the reality is things are changing so fast. It's ridiculous. The top tech that was out there 2 years ago, which you think would be around 7 to 9 years, is now being replaced.
Yep.
18 months.
And you can't rely on a retailer to keep up with that.
Right. Yeah, you can't. They have to have something where the best in breed are plugging in and they get to select from it. They can take feedback from brands based on the usage of the platform as a whole and what it's connecting to. Yes, I agree. If this is a space that's going to continue to grow, it is inevitable. It has to happen. Because there's going to be more and more tech that needs to get plugged into it. But then if I can have one budget, and if then I can have AI lay on top of it,
yes,
making strategic decisions for me on what the right balance is between, in-store and online and merchandising.
Yep. That's the true, like any company today, like everyone has to be a data company, right? And to me, the opportunity that exists with whether it's with the Turbyne or really any kind of aggregators is you now have access to, delivery campaign level data that's married to POS data. So it's pure. And then when you add in AI, all the buzzwords to it, you should be able to get effectively like a media mix modeling on steroids that says, okay, baby food company, we've found that other companies in this category, when they're running a campaign with this objective at this time, instead of having whatever 80% in store, it's better 60%, and this is the right channel mix, right? Like that should be easy is totally oversimplifying. I know it's not easy. But like from a strategy or desired outcome standpoint, like that's where this should go. That's what I'm talking about with convergence. It's all in one place. You have all the data in one place. The whole experience is in one place.
That's doable in the next 18 months.
I think the data is there.
Yeah.
The data is absolutely there. 100%. It's of course it's easier said than done, but it's, I think once you establish the coefficients to do that, like retailers should have that data. As long as they're getting the delivery, but they're not using it. They obviously have the POS data and loyalty and all that, but they're not ingesting the campaign data.
No, but I think the same way with the Amazon's marketing cloud, they could easily do the same thing. They could do a clean room and a lookalike, and they're worried about providing that data back to the brand, right? Because it's their customer. Like to your point earlier, I'm buying from Kroger, from Walmart, from Meijer, from D&W or wherever. I'm buying from the store. I am their customer, and they have it. They just don't want to necessarily give all that directly back to a brand. But if you could bring it in, just completely anonymize it into a clean room that I could then go look at and access, just like Amazon Marketing Cloud you can now, where it's path to purchase.
Yep.
Now we're talking. And I could feed that back into a network that controls my ad spend.
Yeah.
Right? Like then it can make those automated decisions for me. And all I have to do is either say, yeah, make the automated decision, or just give me a prompt that says yes or no. Yeah. And I can make that based on my budget. Hey, you're going to run out of budget, or hey, this is working really well. Triple your budget here is what we recommend. Yeah. Where's it going to pull from? This isn't working over here.
Yeah, absolutely. The ingredients are there for all of this today. It's interesting. It's almost like a man-made problem right now, right?
Yeah.
Between how retailers work, the fact that retail media, everyone's trying to emulate Amazon when they shouldn't, right? Retailers' greatest assets are their physical footprint, which happens to be Amazon's greatest weakness, right? It's just that's why I keep going back to the word calibration. It's not like I'm not saying retail media is imploding. I don't think it's all hype. It just is not a steward, like an objective steward.
Oh, I think we just went through the hype. I think we went through the major hype. And now it's coming back down to this, the excitement around the potential of it is, this huge astronomical potential is just coming back to earth, and it is meaningful, but people are being scrutinized more than ever, right? Around their spend. Profitability is the number one issue people are looking at. I say this all the time, and they're looking at every aspect, supply chain. I mean, some of the coolest AI out there is in the actually procurement and sourcing sectors.
And that's where more data can be converged. So one use case that I've been talking about for Turbyne is where you have, so you can do store level campaigns if you wanted to, right? You could, if you're running a campaign and chain wide, and you integrate the inventory feed, like real life inventory, and say, oh, we're out of stock in these 20 stores, you can then divert impressions to stores that have an excess of stock, right? Like you can do things like that. That improves the shopper experience, the end shopper. It boosts profitability for the retailer, and it boosts ROAS for the advertiser. I mean, some of that stuff's like not hard. It's just nobody's there to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we got there, and we don't even have this conversation 4 years ago, really, right? And then all of a sudden we got here really, really fast. And, I think people are just stepping back and saying, yeah, now it's time to really evaluate everything we're doing. And then they're making the hard decisions of, hey, I'm not adding any more retail media networks. I'm done. Make it easy. And when we get there, right, the first tech provider that comes in is going to get poo-pooed by everybody, and the second one is going to come in and destroy it, right?
Yep. Yeah, that is ringing very true. The other thing when you talk about growth, so there's growth in terms of, are there going to be more retail media networks? But I think the biggest lever of growth has to do with, and I think this is a ad tech problem at large, is how do you sell at scale? How do you get beyond those top 20, the Unilevers and P&Gs of the world, right? The brands are higher touch, lower budget, all the things, right? And that's, I think, it's just only blood from a stone, right? It's getting more and more competitive. How do you unlock, your $100 million brands to participate in retail media? How can you do that? And that goes back to the ease of use. That's where the growth's going to be. There's only so much that P&G is going to spend. There's just only so much.
Right.
So I think that's the other task, is to figure out how to sell at scale in an efficient way, but how to create the right packages and inventory types that these small brands would want. And these smaller brands, I think, are more likely, not always, and there's going to be a million exceptions to this, but generally speaking, at least when I was kind of heading up shopper and overall marketing, you want to go lower funnel in store. That's where you're going. That's anyone's biggest marketing asset is their package in store, right? So you want to get as close to the point of moment of truth as possible, and that's not really available right now in kind of your existing retail media ecosystem. And if it is, it's part of a $300,000 package, right, that these brands can't afford. So,
and they're grading their own homework.
And they're grading their own. Yes, right.
That's the tough thing.
Yeah,
that's the tough thing. I had this classic interaction back when I was at Perigo, where we're seeing a lot of growth, and the CFO had asked, well, what if we just write them a really big check? Right. And we write them a huge check, and then can they accelerate the growth? What will they do with that? They'll cash it. They're going to cash it, and everything's going to stay exactly the same, right? Because the growth that we're seeing is the growth that we're seeing. And, especially at that point in time, but it was just funny, is like, they're grading their own homework. They can do whatever they want with it. Like we have no idea beyond them cashing it, what's going to happen.
Right. Yep. And one of the things I've always thought about, and I don't know why, you tell me if I'm off here, in terms of attribution, why aren't we just using pull through, like inventory, or customer orders, I should say, as the metric, right? You can talk about lift, you can talk about all these things, but it ultimately comes down to, is the customer, meaning the retailer, ordering more stuff? and when. Like that's what it comes down to. You could, in everything else is sort of a symptom, right? You could say, oh, look, this promotion did a 70% lift, right? Of course, half the people who are buying it would have bought it either before or after the promo. So like, don't you just want to look at the net shipments? Like our shipments are up 15% in the last 30 days. Cool. Like
what's interesting about that, and I know it's, it talked about Amazon Marketing Cloud a little bit because it does play in here, I think significantly is it's been around for 5 years, but it only started to take off 5 or 6 months ago. And it's because they launched a thing called new to brand metric, new to brand ROAS, which is really what we're talking about.
Yes.
Right? Like, did our marketing efforts get somebody new that's never tried our brand before to come in? Because if they tried it before and they like it, they're going to be back. Right? Now, sometimes I might buy Chewy Chips Ahoy, sometimes I might buy Oreo, but you got me as a customer.
It's a frequency issue, not
In this case, it is, and you're rarely going to get me to buy one over the other. It's not going to, but new to brand is a whole different thing.
Yep.
And Amazon through the Marketing Cloud is allowing brands to get at that. Now, again, it's the grocery side of Amazon, right? It's not the biggest side, but people will buy stuff there, and it's not as much as Walmart does in store. So we still need to find something that bridges the gap. But to your point, like, what is it going to be? It's going to be that new to brand, right? What is the actual lift? Did we get somebody new to try something out that we might have a lifetime customer there?
Yeah, the net lift, right? It's because when any campaign you have, there's just so much noise, right? When you do, if you're on deal and then you do, your activations to promote it and all sorts of stuff, it's just so much noise, right? You're cannibalizing in some cases, but just the net increase in shipments, and to your point, Amazon is great with that. Like they just tell you exactly what you're up, and it's like the folks on the brand side or the retailer side who are looking at, well, on the brand side, especially who are kind of looking at actual shipment data. Like they're not the ones who are running retail media, right? Like I don't know. It was just sort of an observation of mine that it's not a retail media thing. It's just a general attribution of just how do you cut through all the noise and just say, are we actually selling more over a period of time? Like selling more at that retailer.
Yeah. So I've been picking your brain for, I don't know, 40 minutes here. Like, any questions you have for me?
Yeah, I mean, I would. It popped into my mind when you were talking about that CPG dinner in Chicago. What else are you hearing brands say in terms of how they're viewing retail media, like strategically for within their marketing marketing plan, and what are their experiences?
So everybody's exasperated with it. I mean, outside of Amazon, everybody's exasperated with it.
In what way?
It's just the data side. I think so. What's behind, I think, a lot of it, not only are they a pain in the butt. I mean, you made a great point. Like I hadn't connected that dot before, but that's obviously out of the survey. What people were saying is just they're difficult to use. Nobody cares if it's difficult to use if you're getting a lot out of it, and they're not. And the next level of AI as it comes in is going to use your advantage is going to be your customer data. How clean is it? How accurate is it? How well do you know them? And then you're going to overlay these AI tools on top of that data. And if you're not getting any data back out, I mean, brands are just getting really, really frustrated. Like they need data, and everybody used to, we're collecting all this data, and it used to be in these massive data oceans, and now it's unminable data.
Yeah.
And so they're like, hey, do you have a lot of data? We have so much data. We don't know what to do with it. AI can't go. It hasn't been out where it can sort through garbage data and filter it. And so they're looking right now to organize the data streams that are coming in. And when you have retailers like, oh yeah, you gave us money and then people bought stuff. See, here's a number. No. I need the data behind it. And the retailer, doesn't want to give it up. There isn't a nice way to give it up that's clean. And so it's just all around frustration, all around frustration. And, but again, if you had somebody outside the network, the actual retail media network, the retailer, who would independently look at it and say, hey, this is what's working and what's not in store, online, and this is how you should divide it up. They'll spend where the money, should be spent. I think one of the issues that retailers have is, what if theirs isn't working, right?
Right.
What if it comes out that they're getting this 90%, profit margin on something that's not working, they turn it off. Well, what you would hope is they don't want to be selling something, right, that's not working, but not always the case, I know, but that would be kind of the reality. But I think the frustration is on multiple levels. And I think it was super interesting, like what you're saying, it's like a lot of it's just the interaction with the platform, such a pain in the butt, right? And I'm not getting anything out of it. And then you're going to tell me how much my sales went up?
Right.
It's like Amazon in like 2014, 15 with PPC ads, right? With the old AMS, where you dump a bunch of money in. AMS, I shouldn't say worked okay. It's more when they came out with AMG and like, hey, look at, you got a 12 ROAS. And to your point, I go through my inventory orders and they'd be flat.
Right.
I don't see it.
Right. Yeah. It's all kind of funny math, fuzzy math. And
but
are they, I guess, what team are they on? Like, are they digital only who do retail media? Are they dedicated retail media? And do they ever talk about the in-store stuff, or is that really just a completely separate thing?
It's slowly getting blended together. It's rarely just a straight up retail media team. I mean, a lot of times it falls just into digital marketing once they're doing performance marketing. That's because it came out of the ecom team that was handling Amazon, right? That's where a lot of this started at larger companies. Smaller, mid-sized companies, they started off on Shopify, so they look at it a little bit different. But, that's more just a straight up digital marketing team rather than the e-commerce team. And then, you get into large companies where they're still trying to figure it out. Do they centralize to decentralized? What does the team look like? Who's responsible for it? I mean, the people are still trying to struggle. And in the meantime, it just kind of gets lost in there because everybody, I think, is frustrated with it, like you were pointing. So it's kind of a convoluted answer, I know, but that's just the reality, the state of the market right now.
It's fitting. Convoluted answer. It's a convoluted,
Yeah. So
you and I have it figured out.
Yeah. I mean, all I need is about $10 million and a bunch of coders and no competition.
There we go.
So anyways, Mark, this has been super fun. As we thanks for your time. We'll have you back on. Keep crushing at what you're doing. Love the thoughts and sharing. I think they're dead on. Everybody, I'd reach out to Mark on LinkedIn. Marc Walkin here. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks everybody for listening in.
Thank you.